Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen with tired eyes. It was 3 in the morning at the Kepler-7 space station, and she was the only person awake in the communications room. Her job was simple, but boring. She watched signals from deep space, looking for anything unusual. Most nights, nothing happened. Space was quiet and empty, but tonight was different. A pattern appeared on her screen that made her sit up straight. At first, she thought it was a mistake in the computer system. She ran the analysis again. The pattern was still there. It wasn't random noise from distant stars or broken equipment. This was something else. This was a message. Sarah's hands shook as she typed commands into her computer. The signal was coming from beyond the Kuiper Belt, far past where any human ships had ever traveled. What made her heart race was how the message was structured. It used prime numbers in a specific sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The universal language of mathematics. Someone was calling for help. She pressed a button on her desk. "Commander Okonkwo, I need you in communications right now." 20 minutes later, Commander James Okonkwo stood behind Sarah's chair, looking at the same screen. He was a tall man from Nigeria with gray hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. But right now, his eyes were wide with disbelief. "How long has this signal been broadcasting?" he asked. Sarah pulled up more data. "According to the decay patterns in the signal, I estimate about 200 years. Maybe longer. 200 years. James shook his head. "That's impossible. We would have detected it before now. Not if something was blocking it," Sarah said. She showed him another screen with solar activity data. "Look at this. There was a massive solar flare 3 days ago. It cleared away interference patterns that have been masking signals from that region of space for decades. This SOS has been screaming into the void since before we even had space stations." James was quiet for a long moment. "Run every verification test we have. If this is real, we need to be absolutely certain." For the next 2 days, Sarah barely slept. She ran 17 different tests on the signal. Each one confirmed the same thing. The message was real. It was old, and someone out there needed help desperately. The signal contained more than just a simple SOS. When Sarah decoded the deeper layers, she found coordinates pointing to a location near a rogue planet called LP-403. This planet didn't orbit any star. It drifted alone through the darkness of space, frozen and dead. But what troubled Sarah most was the mathematical language itself. She recognized some of the patterns. They matched number sequences found in ancient human texts from thousands of years ago, from Sumerian clay tablets and Egyptian pyramids. How could aliens know the same mathematical patterns that ancient humans used? Commander Okonkwo sent Sarah's findings to Earth. Within 24 hours, every major space agency in the world was studying the signal. The International Space Coalition called an emergency meeting. Scientists, politicians, and military leaders gathered to decide what to do. Many people were scared. They said it could be a trap. Maybe hostile aliens were using a fake distress signal to lure humans into danger. Others said humanity didn't have the resources to help. LP-403 was so far away that getting there would cost billions of dollars and take months of travel. Sarah was invited to speak at the coalition meeting through a video link. She sat in a small room at Kepler-7, looking at dozens of serious faces on screens around her. "I understand your concerns," she said, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "But I want to remind everyone of something important. For centuries, humanity has wondered if we're alone in the universe. We've sent messages into space hoping someone would answer. We've built giant telescopes to search for signs of life. We've asked the biggest question of all, is anyone out there?" She paused, making sure everyone was listening. "Now, for the first time, we have proof that we're not alone. But this isn't the contact scenario we imagined. We're not the ones calling for help. Someone else is calling to us. They've been calling for 200 years and we finally heard them. The question isn't whether we can help or whether it's safe. The question is much simpler. What kind of species do we want to be? The kind that ignores a cry for help because it's difficult? Or the kind that answers because it's the right thing to do?" The room was silent. Then an elderly woman from the European Space Agency spoke. If we ignore this signal, we're telling the universe that humanity isn't worth contacting. We're saying that we only care about ourselves. One by one, the leaders began to agree. The decision was made. Humanity would launch its first rescue mission to save alien life. They would send a fleet to LP-403 to answer the oldest distress call ever discovered. Over the next few weeks, Sarah watched as the mission came together. 4 ships from different nations would form what the media called the Unity Fleet. The Chinese would send their fastest military ship. The Europeans would provide their best science vessel. The Americans had a rapid response ship designed for emergencies. And the African coalition was sending their flagship, the largest ship humans had ever built. Commander Okonkwo was chosen to lead the mission. He asked Sarah to join the crew as the chief communications officer. You found them, he said. You should be there when we bring them home. Sarah said yes immediately. She had spent her entire career listening to empty space. Now, space had finally answered back. She wasn't going to miss the chance to be part of humanity's response. On the day that Unity Fleet launched from Earth orbit, Sarah stood in the communications room of the command ship. Through the window, she could see the blue and green planet below. Somewhere down there, billions of people were watching and hoping. They had all agreed on one thing. Humanity was ready to be more than just another species fighting for survival. They were ready to be rescuers. As the ships accelerated toward the edge of known space, Sarah returned to her station. The SOS signal was stronger now, clearer. She put on her headphones and listened to the pattern of prime numbers repeating endlessly. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A message sent 2 centuries ago by someone who had hoped that someone, somewhere, would care enough to answer. We're coming, Sarah whispered to the signal. Hold on, we're coming. The journey to LP-403 would take 8 months. 8 months to reach a frozen planet at the edge of explored space. 8 months to discover what was waiting for them. 8 months to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. The Unity Fleet flew into the darkness, carrying with it something more valuable than any technology or weapon. It carried hope, compassion, and the simple belief that saving a life mattered more than the cost of trying. The Unity Fleet moved through space like a small constellation of lights in the endless dark. 4 ships traveling together, each one carrying people from different countries, different cultures, different beliefs, but they all shared one mission. Answer the call for help. Commander James Okonkwo sat in the command chair of the lead ship, watching status reports from all 4 vessels. The Chinese frigate Tianwen was the fastest, always slightly ahead of the others. The European science ship Galileo's Dream had the best laboratories and research equipment. The American ship Endeavour carried medical supplies and emergency equipment. In his own ship, the African coalition flagship Kilimanjaro was the largest and served as the command center for the entire fleet. The crew of 47 people came from 23 different countries. James had never commanded such a diverse team before. In the first few weeks of the journey, there were problems. The Chinese crew wanted to follow strict military protocols. The Europeans preferred a more democratic approach to decisions. The Americans were impatient and wanted to move faster. Everyone had different ideas about how things should be done, but slowly, something changed. When a cooling system failed on the Tianwen, engineers from the Galileo's Dream worked with American technicians to fix it. When supplies ran low on one ship, others shared what they had. People started eating meals together, learning bits of each other's languages, sharing stories from home. Among the crew was a Russian engineer named Dmitry Volkov. He was a quiet man in his 50s with sad eyes. Most people didn't know his story at first. But one evening, during a meal in the common area, someone asked him why he volunteered for such a dangerous mission. Dmitry was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. I had a wife and a daughter. They lived in the Mars colony. 4 years ago, there was an accident. The life support systems failed. Supply ships were delayed because the company said cargo was more important than backup equipment. My family died waiting for help that came too late. The room went silent. Dmitri looked down at his food. When I heard about this mission, about people traveling 8 months to save strangers, I knew I had to be part of it. Maybe we can be the help that comes in time. Dr. Priya Sharma, the chief medical officer from India, reached across the table and squeezed Dimitri's hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Sarah Chen spent most of her time in the communications room, listening to the signal from LP-403. As they got closer, the message became stronger and clearer. She discovered that it contained more than just an SOS. There were layers of information hidden in the signal. It's like a book with many chapters. She worked day and night to decode these layers. What she found was disturbing. The signal contained warnings, fragments of messages about something called the Great Silence. The beings who sent the SOS claimed they were the last survivors of a scientific outpost. They talked about watching civilizations go dark across the galaxy one after another. Advanced species with incredible technology, simply vanishing or destroying themselves. Sarah brought this information to Commander Okonkwo. He called a meeting with the senior officers from all 4 ships. What we're looking at, Sarah explained, showing them the decoded messages, is evidence of a widespread disaster. These beings say they're from a coalition of hundreds of alien species that existed across thousands of light years. But something happened. Something that caused all those civilizations to fail. Captain Luwei from the Tianwen frowned. What kind of something? They call it the silence. I don't understand all the details yet, but it seems to be some kind of phenomenon that makes spacefaring civilizations collapse from within. Wars, resource depletion, social breakdown. The pattern repeats across every species they studied. Sharma leaned forward. If this silence destroyed civilizations more advanced than ours, what makes us think we can help? We might be flying into the same danger that destroyed them. It was a good question. A scary question. Some crew members started to doubt the mission. Late at night, Sarah heard people talking in worried whispers. What if they were walking into a trap? What if helping these aliens brought the silence to Earth? But there was something else in the decoded messages. Something that gave Sarah hope. The aliens had been waiting specifically for a young species to answer. They believed that older, more advanced civilizations had lost something important. Something that younger species still had. On day 237 of the journey, the fleet entered orbit around LP-403. The planet was exactly as the data predicted. Frozen, dark, lit only by distant starlight. The surface temperature was close to absolute zero. Nothing could live on the surface, but underneath the ice, sensors detected something. Energy signatures, heat, movement, something was alive down there. The crew gathered to watch the sensor displays. After 8 months of travel, they had finally arrived. Commander Okonkwo stood at the front of the room, his face serious but determined. "We've come a long way," he said. "We've worked hard to get here. Now comes the real test. Tomorrow, we send a landing party down to that planet. We're going to find whoever sent that signal, and we're going to bring them home." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, thinking about the journey. 8 months ago, she had been a tired communications analyst on a boring night shift. Now she was part of the most important mission in human history. First contact with alien life, a rescue mission across impossible distances, a chance to prove that humanity was capable of something greater than war and greed. Her computer beeped. A new message had come through from the planet's surface. Sarah jumped out of bed and ran to the communications room. The message was short. It was in broken English, as if whoever sent it had been studying human languages from the signals Earth had broadcast into space over the years. "Thank you for coming. We have waited so long. We thought we were forgotten. Humanity may be our last hope." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She had spent 8 months listening to a 200-year-old distress signal. Now, for the first time, she was hearing a real voice responding in real time. She typed a response with shaking hands. "We hear you. We're here. Tell us how to find you." Reply came quickly. "Follow the heat signatures to the eastern crevasse. We are deep beneath the ice. Hurry. Our systems are failing. After 200 years, we have only months left." Sarah ran through the corridors to Commander Okonkwo's quarters. She pounded on his door until he opened it, sleepy and confused. "They're talking to us," she said, breathing hard. "They're alive and they're talking to us, and they're running out of time." James looked at the message on Sarah's tablet. His expression hardened with determination. "Wake everyone up. We go down at first light." We didn't come all this way to be too late. The landing party descended through the frozen atmosphere of LP-403 in a small shuttle. Sarah watched through the window as they dropped toward the planet's surface. Everything was white and gray. Ice covered every mountain, every valley, every crater. This was a dead world, a planet that had been wandering through space alone for millions of years. But somewhere beneath that ice, someone was waiting. Commander Okonkwo piloted the shuttle himself. Next to him sat Dr. Sharma and Dmitry Volkov. In the back were 4 other crew members, including Sarah. They all wore heavy protective suits. Designed for extreme cold and unknown environments, the shuttle followed the heat signatures to a massive crevasse in the ice. It looked like a wound in the planet's surface, dropping down into darkness. James flew the shuttle carefully down into the crevasse, using lights to see the way. They descended for nearly an hour, going deeper and deeper beneath the frozen surface. Then they saw it. At the bottom of the crevasse, built into the walls of ice, was a structure. But it didn't look like any building humans had ever made. The architecture was organic, flowing, like something that had grown instead of being constructed. The materials seemed to shimmer with inner light. James landed the shuttle on a platform near an opening in the structure. The landing party stepped out carefully, their boots crunching on ancient ice. Sarah's heart pounded as they approached the entrance. This was it. First contact with alien life? The moment that would change humanity forever. The entrance opened automatically as they approached. Warm air flowed out, and the lights inside grew brighter. Someone was welcoming them. They walked through corridors that curved and twisted in ways that made Sarah's eyes hurt. The geometry was all wrong for human perception. But everything was clean, functional, purposeful. This wasn't a ruin. This was a home that someone had kept alive for 200 years. In a large circular room at the heart of the facility, they found them. 7 beings that looked nothing like any creature from Earth. They were roughly the size of large dogs, 4 legs and translucent bodies that glowed softly with internal light. Their skin seemed to shift colors constantly. They had no eyes that Sarah could see, but they had elaborate structures on their heads that looked like crystalline flowers. One of the beings moved forward slowly. It stood in front of Commander Okonkwo and made a sound like wind chimes. Then something amazing happened. A device on the floor between them activated, projecting light into the air. The light formed shapes and colors that somehow became words in Sarah's mind. "Welcome. I am called Resonance of Memory. We are the archivists. We are grateful beyond measure that you came." Sarah realized the device was translating the aliens' thoughts directly into a form humans could understand. It was the most advanced technology she had ever seen. "We received your distress signal," James said. "We came to help. Tell us what happened to you." Rosania's hovers, colors dimmed to darker shades. Through the translation device, Sarah felt the being's deep sadness. "We will tell you everything. But please, sit. This story will take time, and we have waited 200 years to share it." The landing party sat on the floor in a circle with the 7 archivists. And Resonance of Memory told them a story that changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. The archivists had been part of a galactic community. 847 different species spread across 200,000 light-years of space. They had cities on thousands of worlds. They had art, science, philosophy, trade. They had been building this community for over 1,000,000 years, but 300 years ago, something went wrong. Species started to fail. Not because of war or disease or natural disaster. They failed because they turned on themselves. Advanced civilizations with incredible technology suddenly collapsed into chaos. They fought wars over nothing. They destroyed their own planets. They stopped communicating with each other and became suspicious, isolated, afraid. The archivists called this phenomenon the silence. It spread through the galaxy like an invisible plague. One by one, the great civilizations went dark. 847 species reduced to nothing in just 3 generations. We were scientists, Resonance of Memory explained. Our species valued knowledge above all else. When the silence began spreading, we built this research station on LP-403. We chose this rogue planet because it travels through empty space. Far from any star system, we hoped distance would protect us while we studied the silence and tried to understand it. Did you find an answer? Dr. Sharma asked. Yes, but too late to save anyone. The archivist's colors flickered with something like grief. The silence is not a weapon or a plague. It is not caused by an enemy. It is something that advanced civilizations do to themselves. Sarah leaned forward. What do you mean? Species that reach a certain level of technology face a choice, Resonance of Memory said. They can continue to compete and prioritize individual gain, or they can cooperate and prioritize collective good. Most species choose competition. They believe it makes them strong. But competition at an advanced technological level creates cascading failures. Society breaks down. Resources are hoarded. Trust disappears. The civilization collapses from within. But why did your species fail if you understood this? James asked. Because understanding is not enough. By the time we realized the truth, the pattern was too deeply embedded in our culture. We tried to change, but we changed too slowly. Our homeworld fell to civil war. Our colonies went silent. These 7 people in this room are all that remain of the archivists. We are the last of our kind. The room was quiet. Sarah felt tears on her face. These beings had watched their entire civilization die. Knowing they couldn't stop it, Dmitri spoke for the first time since entering the facility. Why did you send the distress signal? What help could you possibly hope for if everyone was gone? Resonance of Memory's colors shifted to something that might have been hope. We sent the signal for young species. Those who have not yet reached the critical threshold. Those who still have time to choose differently than we did. We sent it hoping that someone like you would come. Like us? Sarah asked. Yes. We studied your world from afar, listening to your broadcasts, analyzing your behavior. You are violent and flawed, yes. But you also show something remarkable. You cooperate despite your differences. You form bonds across tribal lines. You sacrifice for strangers. These behaviors are rare in young species. They usually don't develop until it's too late. Dr. Sharma stood up and walked around the circle of archivists. She was looking at them with her medical scanner. Her face grew concerned. Commander, I need to speak with you now. James followed her to the side of the room. They spoke in low voices, but Sarah could hear enough to understand. The archivists were dying. Their bodies were failing because the research station's resources had been stretched too far for too long. Dr. Sharma estimated they had maybe 6 months before. Their systems shut down completely. James returned to the circle. His face was grave. We need to get you off this planet. Our ships can take you back to Earth. Our scientists can help you. No, Resonance of Memory said gently. Your ships cannot sustain our biology for an 8-month journey. We are already dying. We accepted this long ago. But there is something more important than our survival. What could be more important? Sarah asked. Your answer to our distress call. Don't you see? The silence targets civilizations at a specific stage of development. Those who have achieved space travel but have not yet learned to truly cooperate. We watched 847 species fall to this trap. But you came here. You spent resources. You took risks. You traveled for 8 months to save strangers you had never met. This is the behavior that breaks the pattern. Resonance of Memory moved closer to Sarah. You are the immunity. Your species may carry what all of ours lost. The ability to care beyond calculation. The willingness to sacrifice without guaranteed return. The courage to answer when someone calls for help. Sarah looked at Commander Okonkwo. She saw the same thought reflected in his eyes. They had come to LP-403 to save the archivists. But maybe the real rescue was going in the opposite direction. Maybe the archivists were trying to save humanity from the fate that had destroyed 847 other civilizations. We're not leaving you here to die, James said firmly. And we will come with you, Resonance of Memory replied. But know that saving us may cost you greatly. And what we offer in return is not technology or power. We offer information about the silence, knowledge that may help your species survive when you reach the critical threshold. Is this trade acceptable? Commander Okonkwo didn't hesitate. Yes, we'll find a way to get you home safely, whatever it takes. The emergency meeting aboard the Kilimanjaro lasted for 3 hours. Commander Okonkwo stood at the head of the table, surrounded by the captains of all 4 ships. The problem was simple, but impossible to solve. 7 archivists needed to travel back to Earth. But the Unity fleet's life support systems couldn't handle them for 8 months. The mathematics were brutal and clear. Someone would have to stay behind. Captain Lu Wei from the Tianwen said quietly. Some of us would have to remain on LP-403 while the others transported the archivists to Earth. Then maybe a second mission could come back for us. That would take years, Dr. Sharma said. By the time a rescue mission was organized and traveled here, whoever stayed behind would run out of supplies. It would be a death sentence. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. To save the archivists, some humans would have to die. It was the same cruel calculation that had killed Dimitri's family on Mars. Resources versus lives. Sarah had been quiet, thinking hard. Now she spoke up. There's another option. The archivists have stasis technology. I've seen the chambers in their facility. What if we convert one of our ships to carry them in suspended animation? They wouldn't need life support if they were in stasis. That would require gutting one of our cargo bays, said Captain Martinez from the Endeavour 2. We'd have to abandon all the scientific equipment and samples we've collected, and we'd have to transfer some crew members to other ships. It would be cramped, uncomfortable, maybe dangerous. But possible? James asked. Dr. Sharma nodded slowly. With the archivist's help, yes, it's possible. The decision required unanimous agreement from all 4 ship commanders. The Chinese, European, American, and African coalition governments had all invested billions in this mission. They expected their ships to return with valuable scientific data. Abandoning that cargo would have serious political consequences. Captain Liu spoke first. My government will not approve this. They sent the Tianwen specifically to collect samples and technology. I am under orders to bring back everything we gathered. If I return without it, I will be court-martialed. James started to argue, but Captain Liu held up her hand. However, she continued, I am the captain of my ship. At this distance from Earth, I must make my own decisions. I vote yes. We save them. The other captains looked surprised. Captain Liu had been the strictest officer in the fleet, always following regulations exactly. But now, she was choosing compassion over orders. That night, Dmitry Volkov found Captain Liu alone in the observation deck, staring out at the frozen planet below. He sat down next to her without asking permission. Can I tell you something? He asked. Of course. When my daughter was born, I promised her that I would always put people first. That I would never let rules or money or politics be more important than human lives. Then she died because a company decided cargo was more important than safety equipment. I broke my promise to her because I was following someone else's rules. Dmitry was quiet for a moment. You're about to lose your career for doing the right thing. I wanted to thank you. You're keeping the promise I couldn't. Captain Liu looked at the reflection of the planet in the window. I have been a military officer for 30 years. I always followed orders. I thought that made me strong. But I watched this crew for 8 months. I saw Americans sharing food with Chinese. I saw Russians working with Europeans. I saw Africans teaching Indians. We were supposed to be separate, but we became one family. Maybe that's real strength. Over the next 72 hours, the crew worked around the clock. They removed all the scientific equipment from the Galileo's Dreams cargo bay. They installed 7 stasis chambers built with archivist technology. They transferred crew members to other ships, making room for the refugees. It was hard work. Some people complained about the cramped conditions. Some argued that they were throwing away valuable research. but most understood what was at stake. They were choosing what kind of species humanity would be. During the work, Resonance of Memory made an unexpected request. She wanted to remain awake during the journey instead of going into stasis. Dr. Sharma warned her that it would be extremely difficult. Her body was already weak. 8 months without stasis would probably kill her. I know, Resonance of Memory said, but I have one final task. I must teach Dr. Chen everything we learned about the silence. If humanity is truly immune, you need to understand what you will face as you travel deeper into space. This knowledge is more important than my life. Sarah tried to argue, but the archivist was firm. I have lived 200 years longer than I expected. I saw my entire civilization fall. I have been alone in the dark, waiting and hoping. Now I have one more purpose. Let me fulfill it. The return journey began. 6 archivists slept in their stasis chambers while Resonance of Memory stayed awake, teaching Sarah everything the archivists had learned. She told Sarah about 847 different civilizations, the builders who created structures that spanned entire solar systems, the singers who communicated through quantum entanglement across impossible distances, the dreamers who existed partially in higher dimensions. Each species had been magnificent in their own way. Each had achieved wonders that humanity couldn't yet imagine, and each had destroyed themselves in predictable patterns. They reached a point where their technology allowed them to do incredible things. But their societies hadn't learned how to work together. They became suspicious of each other. They fought over resources even when they had plenty. They chose competition over cooperation because they thought it made them strong. But it didn't make them strong, Resonance of Memory explained, her colors growing dimmer each day. It made them fragile. A society based on competition is always one crisis away from collapse. When trouble came, they turned on each other instead of helping each other. Why didn't they change? Sarah asked. But by the time they realized the problem, their entire civilization was built on competition. Changing would require dismantling everything they had built. It seemed easier to keep going the same way and hope for the best. Hope is not a strategy. As the weeks passed, Resonance of Memory grew weaker. Dr. Sharma did everything she could, but archivist biology was too different from human. Medicine that helped humans did nothing for the alien, but Resonance refused to stop teaching. Every day, she and Sarah sat in the converted cargo bay, surrounded by sleeping archivists. They talked about the patterns of the silence. They discussed what made civilizations strong or fragile. They explored the question of what truly mattered when a species reached for the stars. Came when called, Resonance said during one of their last conversations. Her colors were pale now, barely glowing. This is not logical. This is not strategically sound. You've spent vast resources to save 7 dying aliens who can offer you nothing in return. By the calculations of most civilizations, this was foolish. Sarah held the archivist's delicate limb gently. Maybe we're just not very good at math. Resonance's colors flickered, and what Sarah had learned was laughter. No, you understand something that we forgot. The most important things cannot be calculated. Love, compassion, honor, duty. These things make no sense in an equation, but they are what make life worth living. And perhaps they are what makes civilization worth saving. On the final day before they reached Earth orbit, Resonance of Memory asked Sarah to record a message. She was too weak to move now. Dr. Sharma had her on life. Support systems that barely worked with her alien biology, Sarah activated the recording device and held it close. To whoever finds this message, Resonance began, her thoughts coming through the translator slowly. We searched for 1,000 years for the equation that would save us from the silence. We built computers that could calculate every possible future. We studied 847 civilizations as they fell. We analyzed every variable, every pattern, every choice they made. She paused, gathering strength. We never found the equation, because it does not exist. The answer is not in mathematics or logic or strategy. The answer is simpler and harder than that. You must care. You must care about people you will never meet. You must care about futures you will never see. You must care beyond reason, beyond profit, beyond calculation. This is the strength that survives when everything else fails. Those were her last words. Resonance of Memory died 3 hours before the Unity fleet entered Earth orbit. Sarah sat with her in the cargo bay, holding her limb, feeling the glow fade from her translucent body. But Sarah didn't cry. Resonance had given humanity something more precious than technology or treasure. She had given them a warning about their own future and a roadmap for how to survive it. She had died teaching, serving, helping until the very end. That, Sarah thought, was true strength. The Unity fleet returned to Earth orbit on May 17, 2149. The whole world watched as the 4 ships approached the blue and green planet. Billions of people waited to hear what had been found at the edge of space. They expected tales of advanced technology or amazing discoveries. They didn't expect to hear about 7 dying refugees and 1 teacher who sacrificed her life to warn humanity about its future. Commander James Okonkwo addressed the world from the bridge of the Kilimanjaro. His face was tired but proud as he explained what had happened. He told them about the archivists, about the silence, about the choice his crew had made to abandon valuable cargo to save lives. He told them about Resonance of Memory, who stayed awake through 8 months of pain to teach humanity how to survive. The response from Earth was complicated. Some people called the mission a waste of money. They said the crew should have brought back technology instead of refugees. They said saving 7 aliens wasn't worth the cost of the mission. Politicians argued. Scientists debated. The news media ran stories questioning whether the mission was a success or a failure. But something else happened too. Regular people responded differently. When they heard Dimitri's story about losing his family on Mars, they understood. When they saw a video of Captain Liu choosing compassion over her career, they were moved. When they learned about Resonance of Memory teaching until she died, they cried. A movement began. It started small, with people posting messages on social media, using the hashtag #WeAreComing. They shared stories of times they had helped strangers. They talked about the importance of answering when someone calls for help. They argued that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or wealth, but compassion. The 6 surviving archivists were taken to a special facility designed to meet their needs. Dr. Sharma led the team caring for them, learning about their biology, trying to keep them alive. The archivists cooperated fully, sharing their knowledge and grateful for every day they continued to exist. 2 weeks after the fleet's return, the archivists provided humanity with coordinates to 23 other species they believed might have survived the silence in isolated pockets of the galaxy. These were species that had gone quiet, but might not be completely extinct. Maybe there were more survivors out there, waiting alone in the dark like the archivists had waited. More importantly, they shared their complete understanding of the silence. They showed human scientists the patterns that led to civilizations destroying themselves. They explained the critical threshold, where technological capability became dangerous without ethical development. They taught humanity what to watch for in their own society. The information was sobering. According to the archivists' research, Earth was approaching the critical threshold. Within the next 100 years, humanity would have technology powerful enough to either transform their civilization or destroy it. Nuclear weapons had been just the beginning. Soon there would be artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, nanotechnology, quantum computing. Each advancement would give humanity godlike powers. The question was whether humanity's wisdom would keep pace with their cleverness. Dr. Sarah Chen presented the archivists' findings to the International Space Coalition. She stood before the same group of leaders who had approved the original mission and told them hard truths. The archivists studied 847 civilizations that destroyed themselves. She said, every single one followed the same pattern. They prioritized individual gain over collective good. They competed instead of cooperating. They became isolated and suspicious of each other. They chose short-term profit over long-term survival. She paused, looking around the room. We're already showing some of these patterns. But we have one advantage that the fallen civilizations didn't have. We know what's coming. We've been warned. The question is whether we're smart enough to listen. An elderly diplomat from Brazil raised his hand. What do you suggest we do? The Unity fleet showed us the way, Sarah said. 4 nations worked together for a common goal. They sacrificed for strangers. They chose compassion over profit. That mission cost $847 billion. But it bought us something priceless. It proved we're capable of being better than the civilizations that failed. She showed them Resonance of Memory's final message. The room was silent as they listened to the dying archivist's words about caring beyond reason and calculation. I propose we create a new organization, Sarah continued. Not a military alliance or a trade union. A coalition dedicated to mutual aid. We send ships to those 23 coordinates. Not to conquer or exploit, but to help. We reach out to survivors and say, you're not alone. We're coming. The proposal was radical. Some leaders rejected it immediately as naive and wasteful. Others were intrigued but worried about the cost. But enough agreed to move forward. The International Space Coalition transformed into the Galactic Outreach Initiative with a single mission: find isolated survivors and help them. Over the next year, 47 new ships were built. Each one was named after a crew member from the Unity fleet. They were equipped not with weapons, but with supplies. Medical equipment, scientists, teachers, engineers. Their crews came from every nation on Earth. Following the Unity fleet's example of international cooperation, the first ship to launch was the Resonance of Memory, captained by Dmitry Volkov. He had finally found a way to honor his lost family. His mission was to reach a star system where the archivists believed a species called the Weavers might have survived. They had gone silent 200 years ago. But there was hope they had endured. Captain Li Wei retired from the Chinese military, as expected. But instead of being court-martialed, she was offered a new position. She became the director of training for the Galactic Outreach Initiative, teaching other captains how to lead diverse crews with compassion instead of just authority. Her first lesson was always the same. Rules and regulations are important, but they should serve people, not replace caring for them. Dr. Priya Sharma stayed on Earth, caring for the 6 surviving archivists. One by one, despite her best efforts, they died. Their biology was too damaged from 200 years in failing systems. But before each one passed, they spent time teaching humans everything they knew: medicine, physics, mathematics, philosophy. They gave freely because humanity had given them something precious in their final days. They had been saved. Someone had answered their call. The last archivist died 3 years after the Unity fleet returned. Its name was Echo of Starlight, and Dr. Sharma was with it at the end. The archivist's final words were simple. Tell them they did it right. Tell them we died grateful. Sarah Chen became the director of the Galactic Outreach Initiative. She oversaw missions to all 23 coordinates provided by the archivists. Within 20 years, humanity made contact with 11 surviving species. Each had been isolated, hiding, certain they were alone in a dead galaxy. Each received the same message from Earth. We heard your silence. We're coming to answer. You are not alone. The 11 species formed a new coalition, but it was different from the one that had fallen to the silence. This coalition wasn't based on trade or territory or military power. It was based on mutual aid. When one species faced a crisis, the others helped. When someone called for assistance, everyone answered. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments and disagreements and cultural misunderstandings. But the fundamental principle held firm. Cooperation mattered more than competition. Helping others made everyone stronger. On the 50th anniversary of the Unity fleet's mission, Sarah stood at a ceremony on Earth. She was 76 years old now. Her hair gray, but her eyes still bright with purpose. She unveiled a monument to Resonance of Memory and the 7 archivists who had saved humanity by letting humanity save them. The monument was simple: a spiral of 7 lights rising into the sky, with an inscription in every language spoken on Earth and in the languages of the 11 allied species. It read, "They waited 200 years for someone to care." We answered, "This is our strength." Commander James Okonkwo, now retired but still respected across the galaxy, spoke at the ceremony. When we launched the Unity fleet 50 years ago, people asked if we were strong enough to survive among the stars. We didn't know the answer. But the archivists taught us that we were asking the wrong question. He gestured to the monument. The question isn't whether we're strong enough to survive. It's whether we're kind enough to deserve survival. The universe doesn't care about our technology or our weapons or our wealth. It cares about what we do when someone needs help. It cares about whether we answer when someone calls. That night, Sarah sat alone in her office. Looking at the original signal from LP 403, the pattern of prime numbers that had started everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A simple message that had traveled through space for 200 years. Waiting for someone to care enough to listen, she composed a new message to broadcast into deep space. It would take thousands of years to reach distant stars, but that was okay. The archivists had waited 200 years. Humanity could be patient too. The message was simple. To anyone listening, we are humanity. We are young. We are flawed. We are frightened. But we learned something important from those who came before us. The greatest strength any civilization can possess is the courage to answer when others call for help. We are listening. If you need us, we are coming. You are not alone. She attached the original SOS from the archivists to her message, not as a distress call anymore, but as a reminder, a promise, a declaration of what humanity had chosen to become. Sarah pressed send and watched the message beam out into the darkness. Somewhere out there, maybe someone was waiting in the dark, hoping someone would care enough to answer. Maybe it would be years or decades or centuries before another call for help was received. But when it came, humanity would be ready. They had learned from the archivists. They had chosen compassion over calculation. They had proven that the strength to save others was the same strength that would save themselves. The SOS that unveiled humanity's true strength wasn't just the call the archivists sent. It was the answer humanity chose to give, and that answer would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. A promise kept to those who had waited in the dark. We hear you, we care, we are coming.